Ken, you were very prescient in your 2014 Eastern District Historical Society address about Judge Higginbotham. And I'll just quote a bit from it and ask you to update your take. Judge Higginbotham's legacy is best exemplified by those who remain committed to lifting a voice of protest against the smug and erroneous claim that we have entered the post-civil rights or post-racial era of American society. It is a period marked by a subtle but definite retrenchment when it comes to steps we have only recently, historically speaking, and somewhat haltingly taken to remedy centuries of pervasive and legally sanctioned racial discrimination and stigmatization, and to level the playing field going forward for all Americans. It is as though we Americans have an almost deliberate case of racial amnesia. That was 2014, when we had a black president. Pretty prescient. Can you update for us your take on what Judge Higginbotham would be saying today?
So I think that Sherilyn made some of these comments, so I won't repeat that. I mean, the fact of the matter is, there is this concept of the fact that the law was always about colorblindness. And even the post-Civil War constitutional amendments were really intended to ensure that the law was colorblind, and that there is no legitimate aim to remedy past discrimination, because in order to remedy past discrimination, one has to take into consideration the fact that that discrimination existed. And if that discrimination was on the basis of race, the only way one can remedy it is to think about race in the remedy. And so what we now have is this concept of what I would call blind procedural fairness, right? It's as though the only thing that matters in a race is that the finish line is the same. It doesn't matter whether the starting line is the same. And we all know that that's absurd. We know that if, in fact, we're going to have a democracy, and Cheryl said this, we are going to have to think about how much inequality we're prepared to tolerate. And that has been the history of this country, going back to the founding of this country. We had this concept of representative democracy, but was it the democracy for everyone? Or was it democracy for some? Does everyone have an equal voice? Does everyone have an equal vote? We're still struggling with these. We're struggling with issues like, how can we incentivize and reward achievement while at the same time allowing equality of opportunity? Are those consistent and complementary, or are they inconsistent? And I think that what we are hearing right now is this idea that let's go back to this ideal world. And as Sherilyn was saying, it's disingenuous. I don't believe any of those justices really believe what Justice Roberts said in the Seattle case, which is the way to end discrimination on the basis of race is to stop discriminating on the basis of race. So if we stop paying attention to race, it all goes away. Everything is fine in our country. I think it's disingenuous, and I think they know it. It's a political move. It's something that I think as citizens we ought to recognize, that our democracy is perishable. I tell the business community that, by the way. The business community ought to recognize that while they want to stay out of political issues, the reality of the world is business can only succeed in a climate that is conducive to commerce and conducive to people. And the fact of the matter is, when our government abandons or fails at its responsibilities at the basics, impartial rule of law, equality of opportunity, everyone, respect for the franchise, respect for ownership of private property, which they all agreed to, by the way. Peaceful transfer of power. When the government abandons or fails at those responsibilities, it is the responsibility of citizens to do something about it, including business people.